Hello everyone, welcome back to The Real Starfighter, and today we are on the final lesson of adapting the Dicta to the X-WingMiniatures game. We're on rule number 8, and rule number 8 reads, Attack on principle in groups. When the fight breaks up into a series of single combats, take care that several do not go for the same opponent. What does this mean? The whole time I've been saying go after one opponent. In initial engagement, go after one ship, take one ship off the board at a time. This is for after the initial engagement. The initial engagement is so important because if you remove a ship off the board, it gives you a huge advantage. However, after that initial engagement, it is all about giving yourself room to maneuver. Room to maneuver is very important. We always get frustrated when we bump our own ships. We always get frustrated when we bump other ships. This is a way to prevent that from happening, to make sure that your list is doing what it needs to do correctly. However, with the X-Wing rule, there is an additional step that I like to keep into consideration every time I make a list. So the X-Wing rule reads, attack on a principle in groups. When the fight breaks up into a series of single combats, take care that several do not go for the same opponent. Fly a tactical list. What does that mean, tactical list? Tactical means fly a list that is easy for you to protect one another and break off to cover one another. For example, we all know that when we watch Star Wars, we see that there are these what we call Vic formations. Vic formations are three fighters in a wing. Now, there are several problems with this formation that they figured out in World War II. One of those problems is if you break off as wing lead and wingman, you leave one fighter out all by itself to easily get picked off. The other thing that they discovered was, well, let's just keep everyone together. Let's keep everyone together when we move. Well, then that overcommits to one opponent, and now you're clogging up and taking away too many fighters away from being tactically used. You're putting too much effort onto one fighter. So the best way that they decided to, let's change this, is go into a finger four, and that is to add another fighter into each squadron. So that way, each squadron can break off into two flights and can take on single or double opponents. It's mathematically easier to go with the finger four because it's easier to break off and it's easier to reform and focus fire on a list. So if you've seen throughout the video, you probably noticed that I fly usually a 4-ship, 6-ship, or 8-ship lists. I usually try to fly that formula, or if I fly a 5-ship list, it's usually a squadron that's all the same that can break off easily with a very strong ace. I've flown, one of my favorite lists is Luke Skywalker with 4 Y-Wings. That's because I can have Luke out on his own doing his own thing, and the Y-Wings can cover him easily, and vice versa. It's a balanced list, but as a list as a whole, you need to make sure that you are covering one another. You have a tactically sound list that can break off into powerful flights that could take down targets with ease. Again, trying to go after. Think about it with a large base ship. One X-wing against a large base ship, it does very little damage in reality. You do maybe 1 or 2 a turn, but having 2 ships there, you're doing more damage than that. You're putting in 2 attacks, you're putting in 6 dice. That ship can really only defend against 1 by putting its resources against 1 attack. Being able to put 2 ships on there just pushes more damage through. Same with going after maybe an ace. If you send off, 2 of these guys to go after an ace, and then these 2 to take out the escort, you're getting more damage in on the ace by having a second shot go through, as opposed to trying to go one-on-one. I know we want to be cinematic with things, but in order to win this game and be very good at it, you have to think tactical with these things. if we look over here with the TIE fighters, flying them through, we can find a point where, oh, we need to make sure that we need to avoid this rock. Over a course of time, maybe we can send this part of the squadron out away to avoid that rock, but they're still in a cohesive formation. It's also really good to start off maybe in 2 different flights, maybe if you want to start from 2 different board edges, because depending on how your opponent sets up, you now can use one as a slow roll to bait in the X-Wing squadron, and then use these guys to come in fast. Maybe after the initial engagement here, when they're done doing the initial engagement and they're trying to recover, maybe this squadron here now comes in and they have to deal with another wave of TIE fighters shooting in at them. It's all about how well can your lists cover each other, how well do they make sense, and what are they doing to constantly push damage through and be a tactical list. Are you able to do everything you can with only 3 ships? Again, let's go back to the Vic formation as opposed to the figure 4. If you try to go after one of these TIE fighter squadrons each, you have to commit all 3 ships to taking out that TIE fighter squadron. But now going here with 4, coming in with these X-Wings, these TIE fighters come here, these TIE fighters are coming in, I can create an argument where now I can send Luke and Wedge over here to deal with these TIE fighters and use Biggs and the escort next turn to get behind them. And now I'm taking out 2 flights of TIE fighters with a very powerful X-Wing on each side. Now I have X-Wings here behind these TIE fighters, punching them through, and then these X-Wings here punching at these fresh TIE fighters. Again, it's a lot better than trying to commit your entire list to one target. If you try to commit your entire list, you're putting your ships all in one space. Again, it's great for the initial engagement, but post-initial engagement, it's all about get everything spread out, try to control different combats, and use each other to cover one another. Another great way to do that is by having maybe use these guys as bait. Now we're kind of in a Luftberry here sort of situation where now that these TIE fighters here want to turn in on the back of Luke and Wedge, they're now exposing themselves for Biggs and the Blue Squadron to make them easy prey, to make these TIE fighters easy prey by trying to chase Luke and Wedge. And by doing that, you're really falling into a trap because all of these 2 really need to focus on is defense, and that's really easy for Luke. And now you're giving up free points by letting these X-Wings back here shoot into these TIE fighters. So again, it's all about tactically sound lists. You can't really do that with one TIE fighter one X-Wing, because one X-Wing really can't get that job done. There's too many TIE fighters for one X-Wing to really clear the way, to really clear these TIE fighters off of Wedge and Luke's tail. But having that second one in there just adds so much. So usually going with the list with 4 ships, or 6 or 8 is very good, is a very wise thing to do. Another thing to do would be to go in with maybe a small swarm and a really good ace. I've always been a fan of a Howlrunner Swarm and Darth Vader, a Howlrunner Swarm and a Defender, a Howlrunner Swarm and Soontir Fel. I've always been a fan of those lists because they're able to hit 3 different points because you have the ace taking out 1, you have the squadron that can separate and take out 2, you have 3 points, you have 3 flights that do a lot of damage. And that's the whole point is, can you split up, do a lot of damage, reform, refocus fire? That's always what you want to do is, can you be tactically sound with your list at this construction stage and throughout the flight stage? Have a battle plan. I always have a plan. If I had to break off into 2 flights, who's going where and who's going with who. That's always what I think about when I see the game state, when I see where I'm at, and when I'm even building the lists. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like this video, share with a friend if it helps you out, subscribe to the channel for more content. This place crawls, and remember to always check your 6.